Alright, what is up, guys? So, a very special package came in today that I've been waiting for a few months now, and it was this weird Zoids branded box of cereal that just came in. I don't know what the deal is with that. Actually, jokes aside, this is, of course, the Hasbro version of the Wild Liger for the Hasbro licensed version of the Zoids Wild kits we've been waiting for several months now. And so this released simultaneously with the other Wave 1 Zoids, but of course was delayed a little bit due to production issues, and now is finally available, and all of the pre-orders should be being fulfilled now. So they sent out the smaller ones, the wind-up ones first, which was... I'm not going to try to remember all of their names right now off the top of my head, but the larger ones, which are the motorized ones, they just finally fulfilled those. So that is, of course, this one right here, the Liger. There is also Alpha Shadow, which was previously the Hunter Wolf, and Ruin, which was previously the Gill Raptor. I don't know if Trike, the Triceratogos, has been shipped out yet, but that one is also even slightly bigger than this, where these are in the $20 price range. That one is in the 30s, so it is even bigger than that. I gotta say, I did not expect this box to be this size or shape when it came in. I thought it was going to be about half this size, because the boxes for the wind-up ones are about a fourth the size of this box. It only takes up about maybe this corner of the box. I don't have them on me right now to compare. But yeah, the boxes for the wind-up ones take up a very, very small percentage of these boxes. And if you were to orient it sort of landscape orientation, this is about the same dimensions as these boxes for the Japanese versions, but they're a little bit thinner. And yeah, they've seemed like they've tried to just reorient the boxes, but they are very similar to the Japanese versions if you were to orient them this way. And of course, a couple of things we'll talk about the box is that this is a pre-rendered, pre-animated illustration on the front. It's not a photograph of the actual model kit, obviously, but it does look really, really nice. And of course, we have the new Zoids logo for the new Hasbro licensed version of the Wild kits, as well as a little clear window here where we can see some of the pieces in there, including the face piece, which of course has the eyes pre-molded into it on the Hasbro versions, which was not the case on the Takara Tomy versions. We have one of the clear rubber caps right there, as well as, from what I can tell, one of the shoulders and one of the feet there. So it has a nice amount of pieces there, and some artwork on the side that looks really awesome. These would really look awesome side by side with each other, all of the motorized kits like that. And of course on the back, talks a little bit about the building process of it, as well as the motorized functions and little battle map you get, and it shows in combat there with Ruin. And so I wanted to do a actual side-by-side comparison of this one and the Takara Tomy version, which I happen to have right here. And we will do that. Of course, I've got to build the thing first. But I wanted to do this sort of as an homage to my original review of the Takara Tomy Wild Liger from almost 3 years ago, when they initially released the Zoids Wild brand in Japan. And so what I did for that video is I showed it again in box before it was built. Showed a little bit of the build process on screen as far as like how everything is packaged inside, and then did a complete review of everything finished. And I wanted to do that again here because it is such a special occasion, and with a new product line that nobody's familiar with yet, it makes sense to do it that way, because it gives us an opportunity to see how this product line differs from its predecessors. So I'll go ahead and set the Japanese version off to the side there. I have the camera pulled back considerably for this to get the size of the box in frame, but I will most likely be bringing that back down for the appropriate scale. I also just finished the Kotetsu review, the Tiger and Bunny review, and he was a very tall model kit, so I had to reorient the camera to be able to fit him in frame there. I'm actually going to go ahead and tear the tape off of the box right now off screen. And we're going to open this bad boy and see what we got. So I would imagine that, from my experiences building the two motorized kits, I can't remember the English name for the Scorpior and the Phobia. So of course we have basically the exact same style setup as we did for the Japanese versions. We have bag A. We have bag B. What, I can't see what bag C. Yeah. And there is a cardboard divider in there as well to kind of keep us from the bottom half of the box. And I think I can actually just slide out this entire cardboard back of the box like so and reveal the pieces there in the little display window. And then beyond that is bag B. Yeah, actual bag B. And then the bag with the motor, the little Arashi figure. So that's, I guess, bag S or whatever. And then, of course, we have the instructions, which I probably will be able to build this without the instructions. But just to kind of give you guys an idea of what the instructions look like for this. Here's the little battlefield as well, which I think is a silly gimmick. And as I've talked about in previous videos, I don't expect the Zoids Wild line to be popular with kids that want to fight with them. I just don't think they were originally designed for that purpose, and trying to retrofit them to that is not really appropriate. Here's the warranty and licensing agreement information, of course, that comes with it, and the manual, which I think these manuals are pretty nicely laid out. They remind me a lot of Lego manuals in the way that they're laid out. The illustrations are very colorful and very instructive, so I have absolutely no problems with that whatsoever. But yeah, pretty simple. So we'll go ahead and build him off screen. Well, we'll build his skeleton off screen and then show what it looks like without the armor, and then we'll go ahead and put the armor on. All right, we are back with the skeleton phase, and this is really the first opportunity we have to show some of the major differences between the Hasbro version and the original Takara Tomy version, and most of those differences just come down to the plastic being molded in a different color, and so there's a lot of slight color variances which can kind of change the overall look of it, although it does try to maintain the same color scheme. So we can't see all of that because I haven't put the armor on yet, but starting out with what's visible, the rubber caps are a slightly different color red on the Takara Tomy version versus the Hasbro version. And while I think I like the color on the Takara Tomy one better, they're a little bit more translucent on the Hasbro version, which is nice. I don't know if that's just because this thing is a couple years old now or what the reason is for that, but they definitely have become a bit more opaque, and they look like, I don't know, fruit gummy candies, whereas these are still very much translucent. The other noticeable difference is the feet, which are much more of a natural sort of gold color. And again, it's not painted, it's molded in plastic, but it does have sort of a very dull look to it compared to the Hasbro version, which is a little bit more of a yellowish gold, which of course is a little bit brighter, but also has a little bit more of a fake-ish look to it. So I'm not really sure which one of those two I prefer. I think I would have preferred it if it was, a proper, like, bright, shiny gold, but I think overall point's going to go to the original for that, but it is a nice little touch. But the big thing that stands out to me that I like about the Hasbro version is you can see the rib cage here. These parts that go right here that form the rib cage, which is a piece that's meant to slide back and forth and interact with the motorized function and the weapon on top as the head articulates down, as I've shown off in that review. These pieces are now in a sort of gray or silver, and it creates a very high contrast compared to the solid black of the rest of the skeleton. So when you compare that to the original version, and again I showed that off in that review, all of the skeleton, almost the entire skeleton, is just pure black, which could be a good thing or a bad thing. I like the contrast with the silver, and I think that is going to make it look better when it does have the armor on. But I think the one thing that I dislike about the skeleton on its own of just the skeleton by itself with the Hasbro version here is the biggest thing they changed between the two versions, and that is a change that is not just down to simply repainting, but actually remolding. And I don't know why they did this. I complained about it with the wind-up kits as well, but instead of having those nice metallic eyepieces that I complimented so much, the pieces that I think really sell the Wild Zoids a lot and are one of the cool characteristics about them to give them a lot of personality, they just decided to mold those in to the face. So each half of the shell that makes up the headpiece here has the eye already molded into it, and it's just a flat, non-metallic, glossy paint eye, and it looks like some kind of weird alien thing, and I just think it looks ugly. If you look at it up close, it does have the same level of detail, but I think these nice metallic eyes that are little pieces that insert on pegs, even though they are granted a lot more difficult to get in there, just the metallic stands out against the flat colors of the rest of the head quite a bit, and it just makes the Zoid look like it is looking somewhere, and the eyes are pointing at things, which is something that gives the Wild Zoids a lot of character in the anime, and one of the few things that makes them stand out. These designs are not necessarily people's favorites when comparing them to some of the classic Zoids designs, but that was one thing in particular that I think the Zoids Wild line and the Zoids Wild series can really hang its hat on, and so for them to move away from that, I think, is a really odd and incorrect choice, but I'm sure there was a reason for it. There may have been some issues with the metallic paint chipping off on the Japanese versions, or they were too difficult to snap in, or kids had a hard time with them during focus group testing or something like that. Who knows what the reason was, but either way, here on the English version, they've decided to have those molded in, which is not my preference, but it probably shouldn't, it won't, it's very likely that it will not detract from the finished product. And without further ado, let's go ahead and put the armor on it and talk about the finished completed model. Alright, and now finally at last we have the Hasbro Wild Liger with its armor attached, and now it is fully complete. And I did in fact use the instruction manual to build this, as much as some people may think I'm a pleb for that. I have learned that even with a kit you have essentially built 4 times now, it is always a good idea to follow the instructions, so you don't end up with a stupid mistake like I made with the Gill Raptor. So, yes, as I said, this is the 4th time that I've built this kit between the original Wild Liger from Takara Tomy, as you see here, the Beast Liger, the Rising Liger, and then again with this version. I did miss out on the blue Rising Liger for Infinity Blast, but that's neither here nor there. And there is, of course, the HMM Wild Liger that I will build and review eventually, which I do own, but this was the first time, of course, coming back to the Wild Liger, but it is the same chassis underneath. It's the same skeleton, but just with different armor. And so, overall, now that it has the armor attached, what do I think of it? Well, as far as the color goes, I really feel like now that we have the armor attached, the point really goes to the Japanese version for the color of the caps, because if you look at a side view here of each one, you can see that the caps kind of disappear behind the white armor if light is not shining directly on them or through them, whereas the Japanese version kind of holds its own there because it's just a slightly brighter color, but maybe that's splitting hairs. The other thing that I was really looking forward to talking about with this one is the differences in the subtle differences in the white. And I know I'm going to sound like Christian Bale from American Psycho here talking about the slightly off-white color. But I mean, that is what we're dealing with here in a sense, where kind of being a perfectionist about the difference in the color white, but I digress. So basically what we have here is both kits have a not the same type of white that the Liger Zero has. It's a more sort of pearl pewter white, and it's a very much a solid color. And I don't know how else to describe it. I didn't, go to art school, and I don't know how to talk about color theory. But essentially, the type of white and the level of molded-in detail that's on the armor sets for both of these allows the molded-in detail to shine through really well, and it doesn't give you this look that kind of insinuates that it's going to fade over the years or turn really ugly. And it's the exact type of white that I wish the Liger Zero had. So I was expecting the English version to look worse, but I think, if anything, the best way I can describe it, and I'm probably misusing terms here, is that the Japanese version is a very slightly warmer white, and the English version is very slightly colder. Now, I like the colder look of the English one a little bit better, but I don't think that goes, again, with the darker caps. If the caps were the same color as the Japanese version, then this would probably be the most appealing one, but again, we're splitting hairs here. I think the biggest difference does go down to the gray accents. which, as I said, do show through rather nicely. And then these this piping right here is much, much brighter because of the difference in the gold and the yellow on the English version. You can barely even see that pipe at all, to the point where I forgot it was even on the kit until I built this English version. I thought that was a detail that was missing altogether. And then the other thing, of course, the other elephant in the room I want to address, the big issue, or the big change they introduced with the English version, is the new molded pilots. And so the Japanese versions have these very controversial pilots people don't like very much. They're made out of very hard plastic, and they're just translucent substitute pilots for whoever you want it to be. Whereas the English versions have these nice remolded pilots of the actual characters from the anime. And I probably should have adjusted my lighting a little bit for this. I just have the one overhead light, and I probably should have had light actually facing the subjects here, but I think we'll be okay. And so we have this nice little molded pilot of Arashi here. And not only, let's see if I can get it in focus here. Yeah, there we go. So not only does it look really good, I showed off the Battaglia one and the Snare, is that her name? In the previous video, but of course, Arashi being the main character, they've got to make his look really good. But the big difference between, aside from just the way they look, that I think is a little bit of a negative with these is I wish they had made the legs a little bit more of a harder plastic, because these are very soft plastic, probably to prevent breaking. But the Japanese versions, these translucent pilots, in spite of the fact that they are translucent plastic, it's very hard and rigid. So when you they have little blades sticking out on the side of their legs, and when you slot them in on the pilot seat, they don't move around. Whereas because of the softness of these, they do have a tendency kind of to pop out. Although with Arashi here, he doesn't have pegs on his hands like the other pilots did in the wind-up kits I reviewed. The last thing I want to talk about before we end is the weapon system. Now, I didn't put the batteries in the English version because I typically never use the motorized function. I do need to just do a video eventually where I put all the batteries in all my kits and show off their motorized functions on screen. But I don't want anything to break, and I don't want to accidentally forget the batteries in there and have corrosion damage over time. But I do at least want to show off the weapon feature, and it felt a little bit different to me when I first put it on. Maybe I'm just misremembering things, but let's go ahead and do the Japanese version. So when you lower the head as it walks, the weapon flips forward like this for the little wild blast thing. And we get the three fangs that come out like that. And then you lift the head back up. And actually, as it's walking, the blades continue to swipe back down like that, which is pretty cool. And then you sort of rotate them back. And the two side blades have a little pin on each side that rests on the back of the middle blade there, so there's no way they can flip forward without the middle blade being flipped forward. And then they clip in on the back here to a spring that gets pulled back when you lower the head. But something about the English version, the ratcheting feels a lot more tight, and the blades themselves feel very light for some reason. So I don't know if that was just, I'm just remembering it differently, or I built it differently, but the blades feel lighter, the spring feels lighter, and those could have been intentional decisions that were made to make the kit safer for kids, but it's hard to say. I think, if anything, the differences are negligible. So that's probably going to do it for this video and this comparison between the original Japanese Tomy version of the Wild Liger and the brand new Hasbro English version. And you're probably wondering, how come there's no lore discussion? Well, I think, as much as I'm ashamed to say this, I think I'm going to hold off on the lore discussion for the Wild Liger and do a full discussion about the Wild Liger and the story of how it plays into the Zoid Wild anime when I do the HMM Wild Liger review, because embarrassingly enough, I still haven't finished the Zoid Wild anime in the English version. So I've already talked about, I've done a review of the manga, I've done a review of the first episode of the anime, and I've done this original Japanese review. So I've talked about the Wild Liger numerous times, and I wanted to go into as much detail as possible about the comparison here and not bog down this video with repetitive lore discussion about the beginning of the anime. But I will rehash that and go into it when I eventually do the HMM Wild Liger, because that will probably be several months from now, and I will make no excuse but to finish the Zoid Wild anime in English on Netflix in that time. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. I don't know if I'm going to get any more of the Hasbro Zoid Wild kits, but if I do, I will definitely let you guys know. So we'll see you guys next time.
Do you guys miss the gaming content I used to do on this channel? Did you guys know this is actually my second channel? My wife Michelle and I over on the primary Star-Crossed Souls channel do gaming content as well as content about conventions and cosplay and some of the niche fandoms we're into such as Fire Emblem, Fate, and Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm also doing a retrospective series on the entire Type Moon series and all of the Fate works. It's a series I'm very proud of and has the highest amount of editing and production quality in anything I've ever done in my entire career of making videos. So if you guys are interested in checking that out, make sure to follow us on the main Star-Crossed Souls channel, and follow Michelle and I on Instagram for her art projects and my cosplay projects. I'll see you guys next time.